to its full potential.
Yay!
It's not legal advice, but it will have to suffice because it's copyright waffle, copyright waffle, copyright waffle. All right.
Hello, everybody. Good morning.
Hello, morning. Hello.
And welcome to episode 77 of the Copyright and Online Learning at a Time of Uncertainty webinar series. I'm Chris Morrison.
And I'm Jane Secker.
And we are the co-chairs of the Association for Learning Technologies Copyright and Online Learning Special Interest Group, also known as the CoOLSIG, the coolest of all the special interest groups. We make that clear every time we get together with all the other ones, don't we?
We do.
They go,
yeah.
oh, copyright's boring.
Yeah.
Well, not if you do it like this.
No.
So, Friday the 25th of April, we have an excellent session coming up.
We do. Tell us about it, Chris. What have we got coming up?
Oh, we've got the theme tune
music.
again. There we are. We have copyright news.
We do.
But we also have
The main act,
our three fantastic guests. Becoming a Copyright Specialist, Part 5.
It is.
And we have Irene.
Empire Strikes Back, I think, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Irene, Christy and Catherine.
Yeah.
As I think I mentioned last time, which of them is going to get encased in carbonite at the end of the
But we
of the
do already
session.
know which one's Darth Vader.
We do, yes. More on that later, hopefully.
Yes.
Yes, we'll pick up on that. And then, of course, we do the coming up next, and we do all the other bits and bobs that we normally do.
Excellent, yes.
Okay, shall we see what happens when we advance to the next slide? Oh, here we go. So
Since we last went.
So we've been up to some stuff.
What have you been doing?
What
Chris?
have I
What's
been
going on
doing?
there? You look quite cool.
I look, well,
Are you
this...
like in a new band or
I am,
something?
as I think I've mentioned before. I'm in a band called Snooze You Lose.
And they are available on various streaming platforms?
Not yet.
Oh,
we're going
soon.
back into the studio next week and we're going to finish our debut single, and it's going to be released on Spotify. But we are on Facebook if you want to follow us. But this was our first gig. We played our first gig and you were there
It was very good.
in Chilham in
Yeah.
Kent, near Canterbury.
Yeah, that huge venue that's sort of almost equivalent to Wembley Stadium.
Almost one
Almost.
step away
One
from
step away.
superstardom.
Yeah.
But we had a lovely time, and we're having a lovely time.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah. And I played my first gig.
Well, here we go. Talk to us about what's happening here on the right hand side.
So this is last week at the Lilac Conference. 20 years of Lilac and my first time ever doing a keynote at the conference.
The conference that you founded with Debbie
Yes.
20 years ago.
Yes, made me feel very old, but also very happy and a little bit sad as well because she couldn't be there. Debbie, who was the co-founder, wasn't able to come. But anyway, it was very exciting. The slides will go up on the website, but they are on my blog on janesecker.wordpress.com at the moment. And yeah, it was kind of a bit like a gig, wasn't it?
It was a bit like a gig.
It had song, it had music, it had film, it had then an original song that you came up and performed.
I did perform a song. That
Yeah,
you asked me
more
to-
about that later,
More
though.
about that later. You might have to hang on to the end if
But
you
there
want
were
to
some
see all that.
serious points about
There
information
were lots of
literacy.
serious points.
Yes.
It was.
And a bit about copyright.
There was a bit about. Well, you couldn't do a keynote and not mention copyright.
No.
That would be
Oh, now I'm thinking of the song Country Roads again.
right. Okay.
But you have to see the keynote to
Yes,
understand that.
you can, and it is recorded, is it?
Yeah, it's been recorded. So
And is it available yet?
not yet.
Not yet.
But will be an interesting copyright dilemma as to whether it gets a YouTube takedown because of all the music clips in it. We'll have to see. They are all used to illustrate a point.
Of course they are.
So they're
You would
all
expect
used
nothing less.
under copyright exceptions, and they are very short. So I only used the amount that I needed to make my point.
And who edited all the clips?
You did.
Well, there we go. Right. Okay. Let's just remind everyone that there is an archive of all the previous webinars, recordings from those, and that goes on the Alt YouTube channel. And there's a particular playlist for all the webinars that we've
Absolutely.
done. Right. So we're
Copyright news, 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 copyright.
As ever, the copyright news section. What have we got going on at the moment?
Okay, I'm just checking whether anyone's able to put the links in the chat, Catherine. I did, yeah. Anyway, but if not, I will try and add those while I'm multitasking. This I picked up a few weeks ago from IFLA. So they've got a new statement about basically kind of principles around copyright and why it's so important. There's also, I think, a survey out as well at the moment. So I just suggested you might want to have a look at that. Obviously, IFLA do a lot of work. They go to WIPO to argue for flexibility in copyright law so that it doesn't become all-encompassing and we can't do anything in libraries and in education.
Yep.
So, yeah, just something... it says some good stuff. So, yeah.
It does, and it comes from the IFLA Copyright and Other Legal Matters group, who do a lot of work, and good people doing good stuff.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay.
Then this one is notification that there is an international copyright summer course, which I haven't been on, but I've heard very, very good things about. It's been running for
I
some
think we know
time.
a couple of people who've been on it. It is quite pricey, I have to say.
It
but
is.
If anyone's got lots of cash sloshing around.
Or if it's a fantastic development opportunity.
Yeah.
I think you're in this, you're going to go very, very deep into the most cutting edge topics. So,
it's taking place. It's in the Netherlands, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. But we've heard good things about it, so we just thought we'd flag it up, and one to maybe put on your holiday bucket list. Holiday conference. Yeah.
Not everybody thinks going to conferences is
Like
quite
going
as
on
much of a
holiday.
recreational activity as you do.
Okay.
But
Okay.
there we are.
Yeah.
Here we go. We've got an announcement here. So
Some people might have seen this already.
Yes.
We have done a bit of a soft launch.
launch
on Blue Sky, which I think has gone out to about 43 people.
well, and now we've got another 43 people here to talk to us to hear how many we got today so far.
We've got 40.
40. Okay. Yeah. Are they the same people that saw it on Blue Sky? Who knows? Well, we are delighted.
Please share this information widely, but think about putting in a proposal to come along and speak if you want to.
Just to clarify, I think many people are aware we were planning to run ice pops at the Harvard University in July this year, and we took the difficult decision that we weren't going to go ahead with that because of the political situation, because of the difficulties, the practical, logistical ones around trying to run a conference in the US at the particular moment in time. So we're really happy that our friends, colleagues in Manchester have allowed us to pivot. We're pivoting, aren't we? So Neil Sprunt in particular has been hugely helpful in allowing us to organise the event in Manchester on the 9th to 10th of September.
And it may not be Harvard Law School, but it is the John Rylands Research Institute and Library. And look at that. We are holding it in what looks like a cathedral. If you haven't visited, you will get a chance to have tours of the building. We've also managed to line up the curator, Matt Bancroft from the British Pop Archive to talk to us, but we have our keynote speaker Monica Weston from Manchester Metropolitan University. So more information on the website, and just to flag up that the call for contributions is open until the start of June. So we'd really love to hear from you if you would like to come along, do a lightning talk, be part of the World Cafe, and or have another idea of something that you'd just like to do.
But we thought that the theme being copyright safe spaces and sanctuary is kind of inspired by the environment in which we're going to be in, a place for contemplation. But also we know that the world is a scary and tumultuous place at the moment, and we just think, how can we come together and do something that helps us and ourselves and our communities and the things that we care about. So finding joy in your work was quite an important part of this.
And we will be keeping the costs as low as we can. It's going to be like the pocket edition last year, so don't expect it to be something that's a huge amount of money, and we are in discussion about whether we might be able to offer some bursary places as well. So, but we'll watch this space. As soon as we know, we will announce further details about that, hopefully in the next week or so.
Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing to mention is that the Copyright Licensing Agency have launched a generative AI training license. So this is something we're looking at closely. Jane and I are on the negotiation group that represents universities, and we meet with CLA often. So we have been talking to them about their plans for developing new licensing models. And this is all linked in as well to the recent government consultation on copyright and AI. What is the law going to look like? So it's a developing area. CLA are looking to, I think, get one, to be on top of their game and be developing things rather than just waiting to see what happens. From our perspective, I think there are lots of conversations to be had around this area. We know, so we just thought we'd mention that. So I'm not sure there's much more we can say about that. I'm sure we will then return to the topic of generative AI and copyright
another webinar
at some
about it
point in
soon.
the future.
Yeah.
So this IP4OS is Intellectual Property for Open Science. It's a European project that I have been, I'm on the panel, providing my perspective on copyright and licensing to in libraries to this, and its deadline is what, the end of today?
It's tomorrow, I think.
Tomorrow, okay.
Yeah,
so
it's a great thing to be doing on a Saturday, filling in this survey.
Well, if anybody has an opportunity to fill it out, they are asking for input from institutions.
Yeah.
And it's really, I've mentioned this before, there is actually a webinar that's out there. We didn't provide the link to that, actually. I think I will need to do that and share that with people. I did a session for IP4OS about the perspective from our community and how intellectual property rights management and open science or open scholarship, how they kind of come together or how they could come together better. Sometimes they're seen as opposite things. So I think this is a really valuable project, and it would be great if people can contribute.
Yep. So I think that's it.
That's it for the news.
We're on to the main act, aren't we?
We are indeed, yes.
So we are absolutely delighted to be running the 5th edition of our Becoming a Copyright Specialist. And I think we are actually going to be starting with Irene and Christine, who are doing a bit of a double act to start with. But we're really delighted that we had 3, shall we call them volunteers, victims, who agreed to come and talk about their copyright journey. And many of you will be familiar with the faces on the screen. They've presented at various webinars, been involved in our committee. So we've got Catherine, my colleague from City St George's, who is, I believe, going to talk to us about not being a copyright specialist. But we have to start us off. We have Irene Barranco Garcia from Imperial College London, formerly of Greenwich, and Christine Doutis from University College London. Many of you will have attended the excellent webinar she did on her copyright card game, Copyright for Human Beings. So would you two like to take it away, Irene and Christine? I don't know which one of you is starting, but you should be able to share the screen. I know we've got some slides.
Thank you very much. Can you see? No, I'll go into slideshow.
Yes.
Hold on.
We can see the slides.
In
You
edit
just need
mode.
to go. Yeah.
Now it's working perfectly. Great. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks very much. Irene, are you happy for me to start?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone.
So, we'd like both to thank you for this opportunity. It's great to be here, but also for the opportunity to introduce us to each other. We met in the first instance just to see what we're going to cover, and we realized how much we overlap, how much our approaches are similar. But it's also very interesting how we came to copyright from different backgrounds, slightly different backgrounds. So we decided we have so much to tell you, why not join forces and do a joint presentation? So thank you for introducing us to each other as well. Now, to do a bit of a, by the end of this session bit, hopefully, by the end of this, like us, you will, if you're already a copyright specialist yourself, you may see how much we do, to the point of describing ourselves as copyright gods, maybe, or maybe a bit in a more humble way, realize, you know, what our remit is and how many skills we bring into this job. And if you're interested in going into that area, likewise, our 6 questions that frame this presentation will hopefully help you. So, question one, who are we and how did we get here? That's not an existential question. How did we actually get into the copyright role?
So, we are going to do this in a format of a structured conversation, but we have questions that we want to cover that will explain how we both got here, but also the skills and the values that we have developed on our path to be copyright specialists, which we hope will inspire other colleagues in the room to also look at a copyright role as a possibility. So let's start. Christina, I would like to ask you if you want to share with us. You are currently the copyright specialist at UCL. How did you get here? Did you have a plan?
I wouldn't say I had a plan, but as I told you recently, the curiosity was there very early on. And I realized that I was about 5 or 6 in year 1 when I experienced my first copyright infringement and what I call naive plagiarism. I don't know what to call it. There was a boy next to me and we had something to do in class, and I realized that he was copying everything I had written, including my name. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let's see how the teacher approaches this. So remember the curiosity I had genuinely to see what happens. This curiosity didn't follow me in the next years of my life. So I studied, I did a PhD. I was probably a librarian's nightmare as a researcher. I wasn't interested in copyright. I hadn't a clue about open access. It wasn't even a thing back then, to be fair. And then when I had the opportunity to get my first open access role at SARA, it was eye-opening. I thought, what's this? This is amazing. Why hadn't we thought of this before? So I came into copyright from open access and later supporting the wider open research, open science areas. But it was always an area I was very, very interested in. I absorbed a lot. I realized I was doing a lot on it. And somehow I absorbed the role as well at some point. It happens to most of us. One day you say, oh, I'm also the copyright advisor for this. So when UCL advertised this position, I was really happy to focus more or less exclusively on that. But what about you, Irene?
My interest in copyright started when I did my first, when I completed my undergraduate degree on librarianship in Spain. And I was lucky I had a module on intellectual property delivered by one of the leading experts on intellectual property in Spain. And he was such an engaging teacher, and he made the topic so accessible that I was hooked on copyright and intellectual property from that moment. I am also a huge, I have a love for art, literature, movies, the kind of content that is entangled and in what copyright is and why copyright is important. So I always have an interest. When I was subject librarian supporting humanities and social sciences at the University of Greenwich, copyright was relevant to that role. So when the opportunity arises at the institution, they create, or the first copyright position was created, I didn't think twice and I jumped to the opportunity. So that's how I found myself, being currently a copyright librarian, copyright and scholarly communications librarian at Imperial College. But it has been a constant in my professional career, I have to say. If we move to the things that we do day to day, and we have, you and I have talked about this. quite a lot in the last few days, and we both have a similar portfolio of activities, as will do other colleagues in this webinar. But I love how you have used Greek mythology to create a metaphor to explain all the areas of responsibilities that a copyright specialist, a copyright librarian have. So I will like, Christina, I would like you to share that metaphor with our audience today.
Irina, I owe it to you, I have to say. I was inspired by you because I can't believe I'm saying this publicly and it's recorded, but there you go. A lot of us have imposter syndrome. I certainly have imposter syndrome some days, at least. And it's not so much imposter syndrome, actually. It is playing myself down and saying, oh, I should be doing more, I should know more, I should have known this, I should have done this differently all the time. We torture ourselves. So you know what? When I heard you say, we do a lot and we do it well, I thought, that's it. Enough of this. I've had enough of this voice of doubt in my head. In fact, why not say that we are goddesses? Because we are. Copyright specialists are gods. And I'll demonstrate this to you. So what do we do day to day? We are the 12 gods of mythology rolled into one. We are Zeus, overseeing everything, policy, compliance, licenses, permissions, strategy, hopefully without the abuses that Zeus did, but there you go. Then we are inspired by Hera, who was famously jealous and possessive. So we are helping authors protect their IP, protect their rights. And into this comes rights retention as well. We're certainly Poseidon, helping others navigate the choppy waters of copyright with resources, with one-to-one support, with advice, etc., etc. Communication is a huge part of it. So like Hermes, we fly around the institution and we communicate the right messages to the right audiences. But it's not just about messages and it's not just about information sharing. It is about developing copyright wisdom, also known as copyright literacy, like Athena, the goddess of wisdom. And because copyright is often seen as dry and difficult, we try to do this playfully. Like Dionysus minus the wine, we try to make this as fun as possible. At the same time, understanding that there are areas that are quite polarized. We saw this with Gen AI, with nothing else. We try to make it critical and open to debate and fight battles if necessary, like Ares, the god of war. At the same time, communities play a huge role in that. I just set up a copyright literacy community at UCL. I hope that goes well. It's very new and ambitious to sow the seeds of copyright literacy and see things blossom and grow in this respect. We try to forge relationships. Relationships are very important within and beyond our institutions, pretty much like Hephaestus forged them in his workshop. We support the arts and cultural heritage as well as other disciplines inspired by Apollo. And let us not forget that we spend a lot of time with our personal and professional development as well, hunting for new knowledge, for networking, for ways to learn more on the role and use this knowledge applied to practice, like Diana or Artemis. And finally, to use copyright to support the beauty of open science, inspired by Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty and love. What is more closer to love and beauty than open science, right? So I know it's a bit contrived, but there we go. Let's pat ourselves on, congratulate ourselves and just say we actually do a lot. And I wanted to ask you, Irene, which god do you identify the most with? Which is the most important to you in your current activities?
But I think it will, for all of us in this virtual room, will be difficult to point just one, because
Yeah.
this is the activity that as copyright professionals we do day in, day out. I do have my favorites. I am, and I love Greek mythology, so I'm loving this. But I think I have to agree with you, Poseidon, and helping others, ourselves included, to navigate the choppy waters of copyright. I'm bringing a little bit of clarity and providing guidance. I think that's so fundamental to the role, and I will identify myself with him specifically. But I also like how you use the metaphor of the meter, and engaging through developing communities and collaboration. And today is such a good example. This community of copyright professionals that we are part of, it has enhanced my professional activity for the last over 5 years, and I am so grateful to be part of it. And just you and I collaborating in this simple conversation, I feel like I have made a friend, someone that I can rely on, as I hope you can rely on me and other colleagues in the room. So I think
Absolutely.
those are the two that I would like to highlight. Although I do have a soft point, a soft spot for Aphrodite. I know you have also your favorites, but I was very, for me, it was very good to hear you talking about the playfulness of Dionysius. And I know you have a lot of experience creating engaging activities for your community without the wine. I would say in my case, often is with wine, but you refer to without the wine. You want to talk to us a little bit more about your activity with playfulness?
It's a little bit. I mean, the biggest thing was the Copyright for Humans game that was launched this year and was piloted last year with Ice Pops. So that is something, perhaps I should call it Copyright for Mortals now, but anyway, that is something that encourages debate, and you can see the blog. You may have seen the webinar on that before. But I try to introduce playfulness in the sessions. I tried to, even the online tutorials, to make things a little bit more light-hearted, but at the same time encourage people to discuss. So it's one big area I'm very, very interested in. And I've been inspired by everyone else. There is a lot of activity in the copyright community that is absolutely lovely with all these different games. So yes, I agree. I love this aspect a lot. So getting down from the mounts of Olympus and going into a more practical question, I wanted to ask you, because you were a subject librarian before and you said you supported arts and humanities. Would you say a copyright librarian is different from being a subject librarian?
I've been thinking about this question quite a lot in the last few days, and you probably have heard me giving you different answers, Christina. And this morning I came out with a totally different answer from our previous conversation. And I think my definitive answer to this question is yes and no. And a copyright librarian is similar, and you are still a librarian, but a subject librarian, because you provide, as a subject librarian, and in my current title of copyright and scholarly communications librarian, I am still providing support and information and empowering my stakeholders, colleagues, staff, students to make decisions using their own judgment. And I think that's what is similar to be a subject librarian to a copyright librarian. But I think what changes when we focus on being a copyright librarian is often the perception of your audience. You are perceived to move from supporting or suggesting ways or resources to telling people, because that copyright word in your title somehow give you some authority that comes with the knowledge that other librarians may not have or may not feel they can use. So for me, it's about perception. And when I was when I was a subject librarian and I support humanities and social media, social sciences programs, there were a lot of copyright issues in the delivering of the programs, in the delivering of the support to students. And as a subject librarian, I could only mention things and suggest things, but as I said earlier, with no authority. Once I became the copyright manager, something changed. And I became someone who often wrongly was perceived as the person who was going to tell the academics off. And I cannot deny that that gave me at that time some satisfaction, knowing that academics were thinking, am I going to tell them off? But I can promise you that was never the main reason for me to become a copyright manager or librarian. I think the heart of the librarian role to support and to offer guidance and information still stays there. What do you think? How was your transition to be a copyright specialist? Do you feel you have a different role to play that another librarian in the team?
I started from a different place. So you're in scholarly communications now. I started from scholarly comms and open science. But it's quite interesting what you said as well about the perception. I was looking for copyright cartoons to use in this presentation. I couldn't use it for copyright reasons, that one. But there was some joke about the copyright specialist being essentially the person that provides this authority, but also the person that we can all blame if something goes wrong. And it is a bit of that sometimes. People perceive you a little bit differently. There is this perception that you're going to say to people, don't do this, don't do that. You can see that in how people approach you with queries sometimes, and then hopefully they relax a little bit and they know there's a lot you can do as well. Very, very similarly to you, even though from another role, I would say, I would echo what you just said, I think.
I'm very conscious of the time, and I don't want to take any
let's
time
move on.
away from Catherine. So let's move and look at the areas we are responsible for, and we are very we have a lot of similarities also in our day-to-day activity, and we have come with these top three. Christina, why don't you give us a little bit of an insight in what are your most busiest times, and what do you do in your role?
So, like you, Irina, I just thought, what is the bulk of the queries that I get and the support that I'm asked to provide? And it's interesting. It's PGR support, a lot of using third-party copyright mainly in people's theses. It is advice on publishing open access and understanding open licenses, a bit more broad than that sometimes, hopefully with licensing research data as well throughout the cycle, thinking of rights, etc. But the third one I put there is not so much about queries, it's the more proactive thing that I talked about, to build a community and encourage people to meet and co-create understanding of copyright, hopefully co-create resources, case studies coming out of this, etc. We have big plans for that, but it's early days. So I see that your list is very similar, but you have AI there as well, which is very interesting. So do you want to talk more about that?
I just saw a message from Jane asking us to wrap up by 11:40, and I noticed we have 2 more minutes. So
Okay.
I think let's use the last 2 minutes to tell colleagues what are the biggest perk of being a copyright specialist, what is what we enjoy the most, and then hopefully we make the presentation available and colleagues can look at the other areas we are not going to be going into a deeper analysis. But Christina, I think you start here.
We are so chatty, aren't we? Okay, time flew. What is the biggest perk of the role for
For
you?
me, for me, definitely. And I have, I just, very briefly, I have always, as a copyright specialist and librarian, I have enjoyed autonomy to decide the areas I wanted to develop and how I support my stakeholders. But on top of that, the constant learning, the opportunities for development, the constant development, that's something that really, makes me very happy, makes me love my job. And definitely the opportunity to collaborate within the organization, but as I already mentioned, outside with other colleagues like you, Christina, has been the biggest perk of having this kind of role. What about you?
Similar things, but the first thing that came to my head, to be honest, was this aha moment, seeing it in others. When they come with something and they say, oh, I understand now. I didn't know this. This will enable me to do X or Y. And equally, me understanding new areas myself and putting this into practice is so rewarding. So we both love our jobs, don't we?
We do. Thank you, Chris and Jane. And we don't want to take more time because we want Catherine to have proper time to do her presentation.
Oh,
thank you both. Sorry everybody.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, that slight hitch there. As I say, I think lots of people are back now, but we will try to investigate quite what happened, because none of us touched anything.
We didn't. No, and I don't think it was anybody on this call that did anything wrong. So
no.
But Christine, Irene, fantastic. So thank you so much. We've got so much we want to talk about,
I think we need them back. Basically, we could have had the whole webinar with them.
But let us now move on to Catherine. And you're going to talk to us about what, not being a copyright specialist nor a librarian? Is that right?
Yeah. I'm gonna talk about how I didn't become a copyright expert specialist. Who am I? Well, in theory, I'm meant to know about copyright because I'm the secretary of the CoOLSIG and I put stuff on the blog, and I'm one of the copyright Padawans who helps the Jedi Masters of Copyright, Jane and Chris. I run the quiz at Christmas and things like that. But if I'm honest, I don't think that I'm that much of an expert. So this is a little bit of a joke between me and Jane, which is, I think I've lost some of the text at the top. It should be what Jane says and what I hear. It's a bit of a version of the old Far Side cartoon. So when Jane starts talking to me about copyright, I sort of basically hear my name, and then I hear the words copyright every now and then, and everything in between is just a bit of a bit of a blur. As soon as people talk about Queen Anne and different policies and things like that, I just lose it after a while. So you're probably wondering, who am I, and actually why have I got involved with this group if I don't know about copyright? Oh, there we go. I did, yeah. So it was what Jane says and what Catherine's here. Yeah, I just hadn't clicked a thing. Obviously, don't know how to use PowerPoint either, which is very useful. Yeah. Well, that's not me on the left there. Any you'll get brownie points if anybody does recognise who that is on the left. That's Dana International, and I'm just putting a picture of her in there because I started my working life as a subtitler for the BBC. One of the proudest moments of my subtitling career was live subtitling the 1998 Eurovision Song Contest when Dana International won. So that was how I started out my my working life. As the years went on, the subtitling department was privatized by the BBC and then finally sold off. We became a private company, and as part of that, I then transitioned from actually working as a subtitler to training new subtitlers, and then finally I worked in a role where I was liaising with one of our clients, which was Channel 4. One of the biggest things I did there was arranging the subtitling and audio description of the 2012 Paralympics. It was just like a huge job there. But also as part of that role, I had to choose which programs we were subtitling, which ones we were doing audio description on. And as part of that, I would have to go in, look at the system behind all the programs, have a look at the licensing agreements that they come up with. So if they bought a program, how many times was it going to get repeated? Was it going to be worth our while adding subtitles and audio description from that? And as part of that, you start to see the absolutely eye-watering amounts of money that it costs to create programs. And it starts you know, thinking about things like, you know, intellectual property and licensing and things like that. Plants these seeds in your head. So I ended up working in subtitling for nearly 20 years. And then there was a restructure. I got offered a very generous redundancy, and I decided, right, this is it. This is the time to make a change, try a different career. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. My dad said to me, weren't you always interested in being a librarian? Googled library courses, found one at City University. Literally, it was an open evening the next week. I went to the open evening, got onto the master's course, and did the master's course, including an optional module on intellectual law and policy. So definitely covered copyright there, and you know, started to learn a bit more about it in that context. I think I should have another picture on here. It's probably, yep. And then at the end of my master's, I was really lucky and I got onto a one-year traineeship at City University Library. For part of the time that I was doing the traineeship, I spent 6 months in the business school, and then I was due to spend 6 months in the copyright team. So I was actually working with Stephen Penton, who a lot of you will recognize that name. And you know, we were doing things like scanning readings for reading lists, creating our you know, our feedback to the CLA about, you know, what resources we had used. And I was also involved in a really big project where we were checking PhD theses that were going to get sent off to the British Library to get scanned and added to the ethos database. And going through all of these theses, it was kind of my first inkling that maybe even if you're a real expert in your area as an academic, maybe you don't know anything about copyright, because the number of images that had to get redacted from the scans was just vast. You know, you would look at a thesis and go, where did you find that image? I'm going to Google what you say that image is. Yep, you just Googled it, copied and pasted it into your theses, and you had like no idea that this was breaking copyright regulations. So, you know, it's one of these things where you know, you start to realize that maybe not everybody knows about copyright. Maybe you know, that's something that people need a bit of guidance on. So I'm sure to Stephen, you know, I learned a lot from Stephen, but much to his disgust, I'm sure a job came up in the user services team, and I forsook copyright and moved over to doing things like, you know, creating rotas for the service desk, reporting broken toilets to property and facilities, all the fun stuff, you know, that nobody thinks is part of being a librarian. But I think even working in that role, you do pick up on aspects of, you know, copyright, because you're getting students coming to the desk saying, well, why don't you subscribe to this e-journal? You know, well, why couldn't I get onto this ebook? You know, they don't understand that it costs money to buy these things, and that the library maybe only has one license for one book at you know, and only one student can use it at a time. And you're trying to explain these things to the students as well. So after I'd been in that role I'd worked at the library at City for 3 years. I went to another university that I won't name, and I was very, very unhappy there. And I did everything in my power to leave as soon as possible. And so while I was there, I saw a job advertised. And in fact, I think Jane tweeted about it. That's how I knew about it, in as an assistant educational technologist in learning enhancement and development. So the learning enhancement and development team at City, we are now City St George's. I'll probably keep saying city, meaning city, City St George's, but it was city at that point. So learning enhancement and development team at the university is we have our team of educational technologists. It also encompasses the academic practice team that Jane is part of. They run a master's in academic practice. I was lucky enough to take some modules on that, including one on digital literacies and open practice. So, you know, again, more knowledge there about open access and things like that. When I applied for this job, I always joke to people that I was so desperate to get away from the other university that I applied for this job like a man. I don't know if you've heard this thing, is that in theory, women are meant to look at job descriptions and sort of say, oh, I can do 75% of that job, but I can't do 25%, so I'm not going to apply. Whereas men look at the job and say, oh, I could do 75% of that job. I'm sure I can pick up the rest. So it was partly my desperation and partly, just I think being older and a bit more confident. I looked at the job description and I thought, yeah, I can do 75% of that. I bet I can blag the other 25%. And luckily enough, I then got the job. So either it was my false confidence or just the fact that I realized that I could probably learn a lot of the job on the job meant that I got the job. So actually, I think like in this role, a lot of it is recognizing what you don't know and then trying to find out where you can find out about it. So to begin with, I had to a lot of my job is around supporting people on using our virtual learning environment, which is Moodle. And to begin with, I didn't really know much about it, but I learned very, very quickly. And a lot of the job is knowing, is somebody asking you a question, you saying, I don't know, but I'll go off and find out. And it's the same with copyright. So I'm talking about Moodle. A lot of my job is training people to use Moodle. Oh no, I did have my slides in a different order, and I've moved them around now. I've got this picture of a basking shark because this is basically how I pick up knowledge. I kind of float along the surface with my mouth open, and I just pick up loads of bits of knowledge about lots of different things. But I don't really go very deep about things. So I kind of float along and I know a little bit about copyright and I know a little bit about AI and I do know a lot about Moodle, but there are other bits of the job that I just sort of know the basics about. And I think, for obviously we're a special interest group for alt, so we're meant to be here for learning technologists, and I often find when I come to these webinars, a lot of the people here are librarians, and they're copyright librarians, and I feel I'm getting that imposter syndrome as well, that I don't actually know that much about copyright, but I think I've worked out that floating along the surface, I kind of actually pick up what I do need to know, and that a lot of the people that I'm training know even less than I do, so that's fine. So as I was saying, I do spend a lot of my time training people how to use Moodle, but as you see, like virtually one of the first slides in my training session of introduction to Moodle is that we bang on about copyright. We go in there straight away and we say, you need to think about copyright. And we find that a lot of academics just, don't think about it very much at all. We did take a slightly different approach once with one of our introductions to Moodle, and we, instead of trying to create a perfect Moodle module and saying this is what you have to aspire to, we in fact created the worst Moodle module that we could try to make, so that it was just full of everything that you shouldn't do on a Moodle module. And one of the things that we did was, like, instead of having a reading list, we had like a Word document with links in it. And then one of the best things that we had, a special Easter egg for those of you who know and love Jane, is I had a very badly photocopied, underlined and then scanned section of Jane's section from copyright and e-learning, because I can't tell you the number of times that we've gone onto people's modules and they haven't bothered to go through the library and get a proper reading list, get a proper scan of something, and they just put up their own photocopies or their own scans. And as part of this session, we had an anonymous poll running, and we got everybody to confess their worst Moodle sins. And I have to say, the most common confession after we talked about this was that they realised that they were breaking copyright and just putting up their own copies of journal articles and things like that. It's also been really.
This is the first edition, isn't it, of the book without Chris? He's commenting. He doesn't remember
Oh,
this. Yeah.
That's fine.
sorry,
The
Chris.
2010. It's the 2010. The
Yeah.
kind of.
But I'm enjoying going back into the Universal Copyright Convention. I always want to go down that rabbit hole, but we mustn't.
No. Oh, now I've completely lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
Yeah. But you know, it's doing these kind of things that you know does make you realize that a lot of people just, you know, copyright just doesn't even cross their mind, and the fact that, you know, copyright does cross my mind means that I'm like, you know, I know 1% more than they do, and that's often, you know, what you need to know. And this is the kind of thing that has then led me to, you know, I still know all the people in the library. You know, we're friends socially, but it also means that we can work really closely together. And we've put together a joint training session between our departments about creating a reading list, because, you know, so many people don't know about reading lists and the benefits of them. They don't realize this actually guides the library on what to buy. They don't realize that it makes all of the resources that they want their students to access much more accessible, you know, and it can make them accessible for students that have, you know, additional needs and things like this. Yeah, I guess, you know, what I found out is that, you know, it's that classic thing is like, whereas lots of academics just don't know anything about copyright, I know that I don't know, but I also knew who to ask, and I know where to go and get the, you know, the help and the resources. And you know, these are some extracts from our guidance that we have on our EdTech guides, and you can see that, you know, we have stuff in there about copyright. You know, everybody's kind of aware of it, but if we don't know if it's like really right or wrong, we can guide them over to the library and to their copyright librarian and their guidance as well. So, you know, I guess this is a big, long, rambling way of saying, no, I'm not an expert, but I know a little bit more than academics. And sometimes just knowing that little bit more is all you need to know. And if you find yourself coming to these webinars, you find that, you know, despite your best intentions, some of that knowledge starts to seep in, and you start to, you know, notice journal articles and newspaper articles about copyright, and you find yourself listening to a podcast with Richard Osman and he keeps mentioning copyright, and you feel like maybe you should tell people about that too. So yeah, my final thing is, I'm definitely not a specialist, but I know that 1% more than a lot of the people that I'm helping. And, you know, I think that's a fine place to be if you're an EdTech and you're not a copyright librarian. So, you know, don't feel like an imposter, embrace your ignorance. And as long as you know where to go to get that advice, you're going to be fine.
Oh, fantastic, Catherine.
That's
Thank you
great.
so
Yeah,
much. Let's
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you also to Irene and Christine as well. What a really rich set of presentations we've had there, actually.
My observation here is that it's just so lovely to have all three of you talking, and how the perspectives that you give all complement each other. So the question is, you know, that sort of imposter syndrome, how much do we know? Do we know enough? That happens if you are actually a copyright specialist and you're responsible for it. But then if you're not a copyright specialist, how much do you need to know? And in fact, seeing that screenshot about the Universal Copyright Convention of 1952.
It's brought tears to your eyes.
I mean, it's one of those things that it's like, how much do you need to know? Now, there's so much detail in that level of how copyright works, and that most people don't need to know. And in fact, copyright specialists don't really need to know that much about it, other than to know it's complicated. Now,
I think I'll be running a quiz actually about it, about what the UCC did actually agree. I think that's
it's about whether or not you need the copyright symbol on it, and there's a whole thing about North American what happened in America and its influence over the 20th. We don't need to go into the detail of that now.
Don't.
But what I just loved all those things.
Yeah.
The Greek gods and goddesses.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And I think it's about recognizing that we all have a part to play. That it's not just individual people embodying all that knowledge and being the one person that gives the one answer. It's about how we relate to each other, peers, whether we are copyright specialists, sharing our knowledge. And that was just...
It was lovely. It was lovely. We are ever so slightly overrunning, folks, and because we all got chucked out and back, I think that we'll kind of just run for another couple of minutes. If anyone has got questions for any of our speakers, then please do pop anything in the chat. Pop your hand up as well. Yeah, I mean, Irene, Christine, do you want to respond at all to anything Catherine said?
I think, I think Catherine is being very modest because, I am a copyright librarian and I have over 10 years of experience. And I do feel, and I have no imposter syndrome, but there is something she said that is very important. You need to know what you don't know. Because if you don't know, if you know what you don't know, you can go and find the answer and you can go and talk to someone who knows more or who can support you. And it's so, I mean, that it applies to everything in life, but specifically to copyright.
Yeah.
And I mentioned this earlier, and I mentioned this several times. If to anyone who has talked to me, this is why the copyright community in the UK specifically is so important, and it really enhanced the professional activity of all of us. Because you don't have to fake that you know it, or you don't have to feel like you have to fake. You don't know it, you ask a question. Colleagues are generous with their time and their knowledge and their approach, and we will share that, and you will be able to build your own answer, because copyright is about interpreting. So we may have different interpretations, but as Catherine said, that's the key, to know what you don't know and to find that support and to find that answer.
Yeah. Christine, do you want to say anything?
I loved what Catherine said about how she approached the thing in Moodle. Catherine, if it's okay, I'll pick your brains on a few things, because I love the demonstrating of the scan of the book and the confession that came with it and all that. So everyone does things on Moodle that they shouldn't be doing. We don't police it, but I love your approach. So
I think you could probably use that in copyright, literacy as well. As how can you have the the worst, most law-breaking, presentation or whatever.
But Catherine, you're like our secret weapon, aren't you, really? Because you're there sort of seeing a lot of the things and talking to people. For me, when I was working at LSE, because I was in the learning technology team, I did feel that there was a real importance of getting the learning technologists to sort of do some of my work for me, because the moment someone said, oh, you might want to speak to Jane, our copyright specialist, they'd either run a mile or start hiding things in Moodle and not admit what they were doing. So, you being there, but kind of also having that up front as a really important part of the training, and the way we kind of say this is copyright and accessibility, and these are really important things to think about, when you're designing online courses. I think
people do get scared when they hear it's like, oh, you have to be aware of copyright, and then actually when you actually explain that a lot of it is like, if you scan it yourself, it's not going to be accessible, or if you scan it yourself, the library doesn't know that this really important journal that you think all your students need to have access to, they're not going to bother renewing their subscription to it. So a lot of it is actually explaining why it affects them rather than being the policeman.
And I think another thing that's really valuable is having people within our community that are not the specialists that can help us understand how we might be getting a bit bogged down in detail, or perhaps being a bit insular. And the fact is, the best work I've ever done has been in collaboration with other people who are not so in the detail, and thinking about things like accessibility or user experience. So Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got some great comments as well in the chat from people. It doesn't look like anyone wants to ask specific questions, and we are over time.
We are.
So I think we're on to just a little wrap up now, and hopefully we'll be able to get our slides back again. This is
Yes, indeed we will.
we may be in the wrong place, but let's see what happens.
There we are. I think that's the right place. See? So, Zoom platform. We love the Zoom platform. Clearly no issues with that. No teething troubles at all. So, yes, we will be making sure that we don't have the same issue we had again next time. We are going to be sharing copyright anxiety research findings, are we? Are we doing that next month?
I don't think we're doing it next month.
I don't think we're doing... What are we doing next month?
Soon. We haven't got a webinar yet.
We haven't got a webinar yet.
No,
we haven't got a topic.
We haven't.
There's lots to talk about. I'm sure we can find
something.
something.
Yeah, we need to line something up. We've been busy with things, but we do want to talk about copyright anxiety. We just need to talk about it in the afternoon if we would like our co-presenter in Canada to not be half asleep or have to stay up till 3 a.m.
Okay.
So, but what I think, watch this space for May and June dates.
And of course, any suggestions for topics that people want to discuss, please let us know.
Yeah, or maybe we'll just have Christine and Irene back with the gods, and we'll do a quiz with Catherine hosting. So, and we can just have a rest. So, but yeah, we've really enjoyed it. We hope you have, and we will hopefully see you again. We've just got one last thing, haven't we?
Have we got one last thing? What's on the one last thing?
Yeah, Catherine. We've got two last things, in fact.
Yeah, I know. I told you, like you start learning about copyright, and then you just see it everywhere.
This is a good podcast. I listened to this.
But actually, this
one,
I know we've been doing the Osmond Copyright Watch, and it's been like 5 minutes of discussing Creative Commons fonts on things. But this one is a chunky 20-minute, deep dive / rant from Richard Osman into the whole AI and Meta libgen whole case. So yeah, very interesting, of course, hearing from an author's point of view of it all.
Yeah, and we'll get the link to that one in the chat. We'll be sharing these slides afterwards. But yeah, I highly recommend that. It is really quite... Have you listened to it yet?
I have not listened to it yet.
You haven't done your homework.
I have not had the time.
No. But thank you, Catherine, for keeping an eye. And we will, at some point, I think, try and get Richard Osman to come and talk to us.
Maybe, yes. Do you think he'll take the time out of his busy schedule to open his mind and have his opinions changed?
Well,
by some librarians.
Some of what he says about copyright just needs a little bit of nuance in.
You think so? Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to everybody. Thanks, Irene and Christine and Catherine and everybody else. We do have one last thing. I was just wrapping up before we get into the next bit, because this is optional. This next bit, but saying thank you to our marvelous guests is not optional.
No.
I must say. So yeah, thank you very much. But yes, one last thing. Do you want to introduce this?
Yay! So we've got a link. It's very I don't know if Catherine can get the link to pop that one in the chat as well. She's done it already. She's amazing. So I mentioned at the start, I was doing this keynote in Cardiff at the Lilac conference. What finer way to end a keynote than to write an original song? Words by Chris Morrison and Jane Secker. I would say your name definitely is bigger on that one, and I'm slightly small. I did not write the music, but yeah, we have a lovely song that's called This Lilac Time. It's got some beautiful words about why we live in these dark times, but let information light the way. It's about information literacy, and you performed it, didn't you, at the end of the conference?
I did. I think we seem to be having some issues with the video here. Can you actually see our video, people? It's gone, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we could leave it for another time?
I think we'll leave it for another time.
I think we'll leave it for another time. There is a link to the recording there, so you have a link to the recording.
If you'd like to listen to the song.
And then if you come, who knows, people that come to Manchester on the 9th to the 10th of September might experience some amazing copyright and information literacy related musical exploits.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, thanks very much everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next time. A date to be confirmed.
Yes.
Right.